Hey, it's Yay for Yarn, and today I'm going to show you how to use the invisible slip stitch and chainless starting stitches to work jogless stripes in the round seamlessly. So here is a little swatch of kind of the normal method of working jogless stripes in crochet. Generally, if you're working in the round and you don't want a seam, if what they call seamless working in the round, it is seamless. But that is usually done by going in a continuous spiral. And to do that, you can't really do a continuous spiral and stripes at the same time unless you have a break in your stripes. Where the stripe starts here, goes around, and then by the time you've ended the stripe, it's the next row up at that at the kind of the seam line. So working in a continuous spiral is seamless as long as you're not doing stripes. And if you want to do stripes, then working in the round has to involve, like what I have here, a turning chain or even just kind of a starting chain to get up to the height for the next row, and then joining with a slip stitch, which from afar might not look so bad, but I personally do not like having this slanting line of starting chains and slip stitches that go up the work. You can't see it as far as the stripe goes, but you can still see that line of different texture going up the work. So this tutorial was requested by a couple different people who watched my invisible slip stitch video, the original video, and in that video I used a solid color, and a couple people wanted to know how you would use that technique if you want to work stripes or change colors. So I'm going to show you how to use the same invisible slip stitch with the chainless starting stitches type of technique, and show you how you can modify it a little bit to do it with stripes and change colors every so many rounds. So I'm going to make that same swatch again, just by making a little tube in the round, and then I'm going to join the foundation chain together with a slip stitch. Now, not every pattern will call for a foundation chain. For example, if you're doing a hat from the top down, then you'll start from the center out. But regardless, whatever type of starting method you use, it doesn't matter as far as for the initial foundation chain or if you use a magic loop or whatever. So now what we're going to do is start working with the invisible slip stitch and the chainless starting stitches. So if you look at my original swatch here of kind of the normal way we would do this, I have 2 rows of double crochet of this darker green. So I'm going to do the same, and I'm going to show you how we start this out. So to make this totally invisible and totally seamless, we're going to eliminate that starting chain that we usually use to get up to the correct height. So instead of working, if I'm doing a round of double crochet, instead of working a chain 3, I'm going to work a chainless starting double crochet. So if you are applying this to an existing pattern, then the chain 3, if there's a chain 3 in the pattern for your double crochet, or whatever your starting chain may be, you would eliminate the starting chain and just work the chainless starting double crochet into the same stitch that your loop is currently coming out of, which is the first stitch of the round. So right here is the current loop on my hook, and right here is the stitch below that I just slip stitched into. That's what we're going to be working into because that's the first stitch of the round. Normally, if I were to use a starting chain, I would chain 3 and then work a double crochet in the next stitch, and I would count that chain 3 as a stitch, but not everybody counts it as a stitch. So if your pattern counts the starting chain as a stitch, then you will just replace the starting chain with a chainless starting stitch. And if your pattern does not count the starting chain as a stitch, then you will eliminate the starting chain and work the chainless starting stitch instead of the first stitch of the round. So to work the chainless starting double crochet, what we're going to do is stretch the loop on the hook till it's slightly taller than a double crochet is normally at whatever gauge you're working at. And then we're going to hold on to the back of that loop with our finger. So I'm going to take my forefinger on the hand that's holding my hook. I'm going to kind of press down on the back of that loop up against the hook so that it doesn't get like all twisted around. So then I'm going to bring the hook towards me and then back behind the loop that was stretched out. And that essentially creates, normally, we would yarn over with the working yarn. We're yarning over with that extended loop. So now that we have that extra strand, if I were to let go of the loop with my finger, it would just get twisted and, come undone. So I'm going to do it one more time. I'm going to hang on to the back of the loop with my finger, bring the hook forward towards me, and then back underneath so that I have two strands of the extended loop wrapped around the hook and the back part of the loop that we held onto. Then I'm going to insert my hook into the same stitch where my loop was, yarn over and pull up a loop, and then we're going to finish it just like a regular double crochet. We're going to yarn over and pull through the first loop and this double strand up here on the hook. That was our yarn over, where we yarned over with the extended loop. And now I have two loops left on the hook. I'm going to yarn over and pull through those last two loops. So this essentially creates what looks exactly like a normal double crochet, which it kind of is, only it gives us the height that we need to start a row of double crochet. So this is a chainless starting double crochet. So I'm going to just go ahead and double crochet in each of my chains all the way around, and then I'll show you how to join the round invisibly. Alright, so I've got one more chain stitch left to work into. So now I've worked in every stitch all the way around, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to join this round with an invisible slip stitch. So to work an invisible slip stitch, I'm going to stretch the loop on my hook a little bit and let go of it with the hook. Then I'm going to come over here to my chainless starting double crochet, and as you can see, this stitch kind of has that same V shape of a normal, the top of a normal stitch. So I'm not going to insert from front to back like we normally would. I'm going to insert my hook from back to front into the top of that stitch. And then I'm going to grab the little loop that I stretched out, bring it over to my hook, put it back on the hook. Then I'm going to pull that loop through from front to back. So once I give that a little tug, the stitch disappears completely. So I'm going to do another round of double crochet. So I'm going to start with another chainless starting double crochet. And again, I'm just going to stretch the loop on my hook until it is about the height of a double crochet, a regular one. Then I'm going to put my finger on the back of that loop to hold it up against the hook. I'm going to bring the hook towards me and then back up behind so that the extended loop kind of makes a yarn over on the hook. Then I'm going to bring my hook forward and insert into the top of the same stitch that our loop was coming from, which was the chainless starting stitch from the row below, yarn over, pull up a loop. So I now have one loop, then I have the two strands from the middle of the extended loop and the one that I'm holding on to with my finger. Now I'm going to yarn over, pull through the first two, and then yarn over, pull through the second two. So there's my chainless starting double crochet. And then I'm going to double crochet in each stitch all the way around. Alright, so I'm to that last stitch of the round. I've worked all the way around, and now we're going to do the invisible slip stitch again. I'm going to stretch the loop on my hook and let go of it. Then I'm going to come up here to my chainless starting stitch and insert my hook into that stitch from back to front, like so. I'm going to grab the loop that I stretched out and put it back on the hook, pull it through from front to back. And then I can just pick up, the working yarn into my hand again. Now, normally, if we were not changing colors at this point, then you would just keep going, repeating the work a chainless starting double crochet all the way around, and join with an invisible slip stitch. But we're going to kind of change it just a little bit when we join new yarn. So what we're going to do is we're going to join another color, and work another row of double crochet. So the last stitch that we worked was our invisible slip stitch. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the current color that was in my hand and pick up the new one. I'm going to pull a new loop of yarn through the current loop, and while that looks like a chain stitch right now, we're going to grab the yarn from the previous color and pull on it to make that chain stitch shrink into nothing. And now we have our invisible slip stitch, yet our loop that we're going to start our next row with is in the new color. So I'm going to stretch that loop on the hook, yarn over with the loop, insert into that same stitch, and then finish out my chainless starting double crochet. And as you work it, the invisible slip stitch might get a little bit loosened up. So what we can do to avoid that is take the yarn tail and tie it together with the original working yarn, and that will secure our invisible slip stitch and our new join of our new yarn. And that will help keep the invisible slip stitch invisible because it won't loosen up and then, make the loop kind of reappear. So now I'm just going to double crochet all the way around again. All right, so I am back around to the last stitch, and now I can just stretch the loop on my hook and work that invisible slip stitch to join that round. So now you can see our color change is completely invisible. There is no jog in our stripes and no starting chain line to show where the beginning or the end of the round was. So now I'm going to move on to some half double crochet, and to work the chainless starting half double crochet you need a safety pin or a locking stitch marker, and this is necessary because the way a half double crochet is constructed, you won't be able to keep the extended loop or the loop that we stretch out to start it out with from untwisting and making the stitch fall apart until we work the slip stitch to join it. So the slip stitch will be what permanently holds that chainless starting half double crochet together. So to temporarily hold it, we're going to use a locking stitch marker. Again, if you need to, you can use a safety pin or a bobby pin to hold that. But you don't want to use like a ring, a closed ring stitch marker that just looks like an O shape, because then it will not, you won't be able to remove it, and we need to be able to remove it. So what I'm going to do is again stretch out the loop on my hook until it's about the height of a regular half double crochet. Then I am going to put the stitch marker around the loop. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to slip the loop part, or the what looks like a safety pin part, over the loop that was on my hook, and then put the hook back in it. But if you're using a safety pin or a bobby pin, then you would just kind of open it up and put it around that loop to hold it. So now what I'm going to do is hold on to that stitch marker with my finger or with my thumb. I personally like to kind of hold it to the back a little bit because I find that a little bit more natural. So now we can yarn over with that extended loop with the strands of that loop, insert the hook into the stitch from the row below, the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through 1, 2, and then 3, all 3 of those loops. So as you can see, that stitch marker will help hold the top of the stitch together and in place until we're able to work the slip stitch at the end of the round that will make that permanent. So now I'm just going to half double crochet all the way around. So there's my last stitch. I'm just going to move my other original color yarn out of the way. And now you can see where we have put our locking stitch marker is holding that stitch in place. So I'm going to stretch the loop on my hook and let go of it. And then I'm going to insert my hook from back to front in the same path that the stitch marker is taking. Grab the loop that was on my hook and then pull it through from front to back. So there's the invisible slip stitch. Now I can take the stitch marker out by opening it up and just sliding it out of that stitch. And that is how we do this for a half double crochet round. So now I'm ready to change back to my first color. And to do that, I'm again going to pick up that color. And instead of, like normally when we would change colors, if we were doing like tapestry crochet, we would stop, working the last stitch until we have one more time to pull the yarn through, and then we'd pull that last loop of yarn through with the new color. But in this case, we've totally worked that invisible slip stitch. Now we're just going to grab the new yarn and pull it through, and then tug on the previous color yarn to make that loop disappear. So now I can stretch the loop on my hook again, add the stitch marker to the loop, and then I can hold that stitch marker up against the hook with my forefinger, and I can now yarn over with the loop without it untwisting, insert into the same stitch that I had just worked my invisible slip stitch into, yarn over, pull up a loop, and then yarn over, pull through all 3 of those loops on your hook. That's the chainless starting half double crochet. So now I can half double crochet all the way around. Alright, so I'm at the end of my round. I'm going to stretch the loop on my hook, bring that stitch marker up where I can get at it, and then I'm going to insert my hook into that stitch from back to front, same path that the stitch marker is going through it. And then I can grab the loop that I had before, pull it through that stitch from front to back. And then I can go ahead and open up the stitch marker and remove it. So I'm going to work one more round of half double crochet before switching to the next stitch. So I kind of recommend that if you are not going to cut your yarn in between stripes, that after every row you just twist your yarns together to kind of carry the non-working yarn up the underside of the work as you go. So again, I'm going to stretch the loop on my hook, close that stitch marker and add it onto the loop, and then hold on to it with my forefinger. And then I can yarn over with the loop on the hook, the extended loop, insert into the same stitch, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 1, 2, and then the third one. Then I'm just going to half double crochet all the way around. Alright, so now I'm to the end. I'll stretch the loop on my hook and then insert my hook into that original starting stitch and work the invisible slip stitch. And now I can remove that marker and set it aside because I am now done with the half double crochet. Now I'm going to work the single crochet rounds and show you how to do this with single crochet. So now I'm going to go ahead and work the chainless starting single crochet and do a round of single crochet. So for a chainless starting single crochet, this is the easiest one. We're just going to stretch the loop a little bit and work a regular single crochet in the same stitch that our loop is coming from. So that one is actually the easiest of all the chainless stitches. So now I'm going to single crochet all the way around. Alright, so I'm back around, and we're just going to work that same invisible slip stitch in the top of the first stitch. So I'm going to take my loop off the hook and insert into the chainless stitch from back to front, place the loop back on, and pull it through from front to back. So now I'm going to go ahead and change back to my other color. So I'm just going to pull that new color through the current loop and then take the previous color yarn and tug on it till the loop completely disappears. So now I'm going to do it again. I'm just going to stretch the loop a little bit, single crochet normally into the same stitch, and then single crochet all the way around. Alright, so I've worked all the way around. Again, stretch the loop on the hook and let go, and insert from back to front. Pull the loop through from front to back, and there's our invisible slip stitch. So I'm just going to work a couple more rounds of single crochet in the same manner by stretching the loop on the hook a little bit and working a regular single crochet in the same stitch, and then just single crocheting all the way around and joining with that invisible slip stitch. Alright, so now we can see our two swatches side by side, and you'll be able to truly see the difference between the two. From afar, it may not look like, any big deal because you can't really see it as well. But if you look at them more closely, especially if I bring them closer to the camera, you'll be able to see that the swatch on the left has a distinct line or ridge of starting chains that begin and end every round, or that begin every round, and then the slip stitches that join every round, whereas with the invisible method in this swatch, there is no sign of any beginning or end at all. You cannot see any trace of a starting chain or a regular slip stitch, and the crochet just seems to flow, invisibly joined but totally seamless. It appears that there is no beginning or end of any of the rounds. So this is why I like this method for working in the round in general, but especially if you're going to be changing colors, because you can get that totally seamless, no turning chain line look without having a jog in your stripes. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think of this technique in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe, making sure you click the little bell next to the subscribe button to be notified of new videos. Thanks for watching.